Okay. We're all set? There we are. All right, great. Okay, welcome. This is the Opioid Settlement Funds Advisory Committee. It is Wednesday, July 9th. It is 6 p.m. All members, we're only missing one member tonight. Maybe one more is going to join on remote. So we will have two members on remote. Before we start, I do need to make a correction. The last meeting when we were talking about the structure of the committee, and I was trying to say I really wanted it to be free flowing and all of that. I said I was not a voting member. I am a voting member. And when I got home, I thought, that's not right. I am a voting member. So not that that really matters how we function, but yes, I will have a vote. So our agenda this evening, we have a couple of things. The city solicitor, David Savchuk, is going to talk about FOA and the Code of Ethics will be our first item of discussion. And then I think I'm going to move item 3 on the agenda up to number 2. And that will be the discussion of guidelines for awarding the settlement funding. Because David is also going to be doing that. And it doesn't make sense to split the two topics when they're very closely related. So he basically will have the floor for the first, I don't know how long, however long it takes.
Not too.
And I do have handouts here about when you're ready.
Counselor Hawes. Hi, can you hear me?
Yeah.
Hi. I just wanted to let you all know that I need to leave at 7 tonight.
You need to leave at 7? Okay,
Yes. Yeah, just wanted to let you know.
I appreciate that. So yeah, so when you're ready to do this, we can just have
Okay.
things around. There should be one there for everybody.
All right.
Because I know they did, I don't know, if they got that at the time.
Okay.
All right, so is there any questions before we start? And hopefully you all brought your little topics that we were gonna ask for. We'll do that immediately after David does his presentation. Because we can always look at the ARPA application at any time. We now have a full slate of committee members. Welcome. So whenever you're ready.
Sure. I'm going to talk to you tonight about Freedom of Access Act and our Code of Ethics. The Freedom of Access Act is a state statute passed by the Maine legislature and sometimes referred to as FOA, FOAA. A lot of people, you might hear people say FOIA. FOIA is the federal version of the act, but we deal with the state version, which we call FOA. And it has a twofold purpose. Its two purposes are that actions of public bodies be taken openly. And the second purpose is that records of its actions be open to public inspection. The idea of FOA is that public proceedings exist to aid in the conduct of the people's business. And so I'm going to talk to you first about records and second about public proceedings. Regarding records, the intent of the state FOA law is that actions and deliberations of the city and its committees be taken openly and that records of actions be open to public inspection. Any record that is in the possession of the city of Bangor or any public official involving the business of the city is considered public unless a statutory exception applies. Because there are a number of statutory exceptions, we will not be going over each of them. It is safe for you to assume, though, that any documents or communications created or received by a committee member involving the business of the committee should be considered a public record. Written communications, including texts, emails, social media posts, and messaging systems, or any other electronic communication regarding city business would be included in written communications and that should be considered a public record. So all communications regarding the business or activities of the city should be considered a public record, even if it is on your personal device. We typically recommend that you create a new email address for your position on the committee and use that for any and all committee communications. We also suggest that you do not delete any communications, documents, or notes taken during committee meetings because they may be the subject of a Freedom of Access Act request at some point. Finally, you should be aware that the city may request to view your electronic communications involving any business of the committee. So that's all I have about records. You can ask me questions either now or at the end. Public proceedings is the next thing I'm gonna talk about. Committee hearings are public proceedings. As such, they must be advertised and open to the public. Members of the committee should avoid discussing committee matters outside the public hearing in order to foster public understanding of the recommendations of the committee. Emails amongst committee members have the potential to be considered a meeting, so members should be careful to not send reply all emails. If you receive something from that the entire committee is on the email chain and people start doing reply alls, then it becomes a conversation of the committee, and it potentially would be involving committee business. And so that could be argued to be a meeting, and a meeting has to be publicly noticed. So that's why we suggest that you avoid reply alls. If somebody is sending you a packet or something, and don't do reply alls because we don't want there to be inadvertently an argument that a committee meeting was held.
Can I ask just a quick
Sure.
question? I put some things together that was part of our homework and I sent it to everybody. Is that considered a meeting? It was a
No.
packet.
No.
Okay.
Distributing materials ahead of a meeting is fine.
Okay.
It's just that you don't want to be having conversations about the business of the committee via email that
Okay.
wasn't noticed up to the public. So members of the committee should avoid discussion of substantive matters verbally outside of a committee meeting, including by email, text, or social media. Two people having a conversation about it outside would likely not be considered a meeting. But if you ended up with a quorum of people, then that could be a problem. So are there any questions about FOA that you want to talk about before I move on to ethics? Okay, so I'm just going to cover a few things under our ethics code, which covers committees and committee members. Confidential information is the first thing I wanted to talk about. Committee members should not disclose confidential information concerning the property, government, or affairs of the city, or use information in advance. To advance their financial, special, or personal interest, or the financial, special, or personal interest of others. That's under our code of ethics. Confidential information means information, oral or written, that is available to the committee members only because of their position with the city and is not a matter of public record. There are some social media provisions in our code of ethics that I wanted to cover. Committee members should not be perceived as representing the city in their social media posts. They should disclose on their social media page or in their posts that they are speaking in their personal, private capacity and not as a representative of the city. Committee members should avoid posting about their views on the city and should be careful about discourse on social media. We have a section on use of social media in our code of ethics. It's section 33-1. If you're ever curious as to it's entitled use of social media. Section 33-7.1 of the Code of Ethics provides parameters to be followed when using social media while working or during activities related to work for the public. Its purpose is to offer a way for the public to be able to distinguish between your personal opinions or comments and comments in your official capacity. Section 33-7.1 capital D provides language. You you should use or need to use when using social media so that the public knows you are expressing personal views and not any official view, or view of the committee.
Can I interrupt you just for a
Sure.
second? Sorry. Lisa is trying to get in, but she doesn't have a link.
Oh,
I don't know who needs to send her one. I don't mean she's actively trying to join. She needs the
do
link.
you
emailed
have the
to her.
drink, the link?
I don't know. Is it in the email chain? No idea.
I
No.
have the link if you have her email address.
We do have her email address. No, we don't.
It's lrogers@wellspringsa.org.
And is that Rogers with Rogers?
Correct.
Oh, say it one more time. I'm sorry.
lrogers@wellspring, S as in Sam, A as in Adam.org.
Okay, I'll send it right to her.
Thank you. Sorry.
Thank you.
Thank you.
I'll just try to wait a little bit. So if you look at, if you wanted to, section 33-7.1 capital D, it gives a sample language that you could use to ensure on your social media posts that, it says that, it says in that section that all those governed by the code of ethics must on their personal social media accounts include a qualifying statement that substantially adheres to the following form. And the form says, the views I express on this site are my own and do not reflect any official view or position of the city of Bangor. That exact language doesn't have to be used, but that's a form that is acceptable.
So if you are speaking about something here on your social media, you have to use that, or is that every time you post something?
It's your burden to remove the ambiguity on a social media post as to whether you are speaking as a personal private citizen or whether you're speaking on behalf of the committee or the city. So that's why they give specific language that you can use.
So if I'm just putting a post about my sons, like a personal thing, my feelings or whatever, that has to be on it?
Well, there are certain posts that there's not gonna be any ambiguity. That it
Okay,
doesn't have anything to
okay.
do with the city
I see
business
what
or
you're
the
saying.
committee business,
All
so.
right, thank you.
Those are for when you're speaking out, giving opinions
Yeah.
and such.
I don't do
There's also a section called use of titles and disclaimers. And that's section 33-13.1. And it was created to make it easy for people to remove the ambiguity. Disclaimers are required when there could be ambiguity regarding the capacity in which an elected or appointed official is communicating. Committee members should state, although I am a member of, in this case, the Opioid Settlement Funds Advisory Committee, I am speaking tonight as a private individual. My remarks should not be interpreted as representing the city of Bangor or the Opioid Settlement Funds Advisory Committee. This kind of language prevents any ambiguity about whether you are speaking on behalf of the city or the committee. So there's language in that section 33-13.1 under section C disclaimers that it just sets forth a number of different disclaimers you can use if you need to. So any questions on what we've talked about so far? Okay, so now we have conflicts of interest. A committee member, our code of ethics says no committee member shall participate in the deliberation or vote on any agenda item before their collective body in which they or a member of their immediate family has a special or has a financial or special interest other than an interest held by the public generally. A financial interest is defined as a direct or indirect interest having monetary or pecuniary value, including but not limited to the ownership of shares of stock. A special interest is defined as a direct or indirect interest having value peculiar to a certain individual or group, whether economic or otherwise, which value may accrue to such individual or group as a result of the recommendation made to the city council. So procedurally, a committee member should disclose anything that may fall into either of those categories to the rest of the committee before an item on the agenda is discussed. The rest of the committee should ask the committee member with the possible conflict any questions that they may have. And we would encourage you to ask specific questions to get at the specifics of the potential conflict. I think sometimes committee members who may have a potential conflict, they're can get into trouble when people don't know exactly what the interest is. And if you ask specific questions to make sure you understand the specifics of the potential conflict, it's better. That way you won't vote that there's no conflict in error if you really know what the specific potential conflict is. The committee should then vote after asking the questions and fleshing out exactly what the potential conflict may be. The committee should vote on whether the committee member has a conflict. The member with the potential conflict doesn't vote. And if it is determined that a committee member has a conflict, that committee member should leave the room for the duration of the discussion on that agenda item on which they have a conflict. Question?
Yeah, this came up at the last meeting, and I wanted to just make sure that the participation of this is to provide guidance to the city council on the opioid funds.
Right.
As a community member working for an agency that would potentially be receiving these funds, I brought up last time that I felt like I wanted to make sure that my participation on this committee would not be a conflict of interest. Such as if the committee recommends to the city council that RFPs be issued for a certain amount of funding for agencies who provide substance use work, my agency would be one of those agencies, the agency I work for. So I want to be very clear and on the right side of the decision-making process for that.
Right. I think that is agenda item specific.
Okay.
So while you may not have a conflict for you to sit on the board, the committee completely,
Right.
there may be an agenda item where the committee will discuss and decide whether to recommend that certain funding be provided to certain entities.
Mhm.
And at that point, there may be discussion of whether you may have a conflict for a particular agenda item
Thank you.
and may need to recuse yourself after a vote on that particular item.
Thank you.
And it wouldn't be, for everything the committee does, but it should be for, and might be for particular items.
Because we had talked about me potentially being part of the process for creating the RFP. And then to me, that would seem like if I were here to create the RFP, but then I was back in my agency responding to the RFP, that would probably be.
Well, this board is just gonna make recommendations to the council as the council, but you don't want to be making recommendations for funding, if you have a financial interest in the funding that's being recommended.
Part of our discussion was, designing the form for the application that we would use for potential people that wanted to ask for funding from this committee. We'd all put our ideas together. It would then go before legal anyway and have it reviewed just to make sure that it's legal and all of that. And then what he's saying is that if your company business wants to be part of that, you would not be able to necessarily approve that particular one. So you would sit out on the discussion of that.
It doesn't sound like designing a form that
The
all
form-
applicants would use would be a problem.
No, but when they come back,
But when it come back to specific item in which one particular,
Or we were
they're
scoring,
gonna
if we were
be-
gonna be part of the scoring
if they're
process for the city,
scoring.
right?
yeah, you
For
should
RFP, yeah.
participate.
Yeah,
in
no.
Any discussions regarding whether or not to recommend an item where you would have a financial interest in.
Right.
The recommendation and the council's vote.
That's what I thought. Too.
so when you talked about that would be an agenda item, that would be a particular specific application that came back that he would not be able to.
Right.
Yeah.
Well,
But what if we were,
Yeah.
sorry to make this so detailed,
That's all right.
but if we were to, let's say we were creating the program specifics that we were gonna recommend to the city. And I was part of that conversation that said, you know, the criteria for this program would be X, Y, Z. Then the city put that RFP out to, somebody might come back and say, Jason was part of that creation. He knew what the questions were gonna be prior. He had prior knowledge of the process prior.
It's tough to make a call without knowing the specific item, but if. This meeting is a public meeting,
Mhm.
and if the information is public information, then everybody would have it.
Right.
That's right.
Thank you.
And these will likely all be public meetings.
Mhm. Thank you for helping to clarify that.
So. Yeah, that's all I have on FOA and the ethics code, unless you have more questions.
Same question.
Sure.
This is kind of running back a little bit. So can I guess was my confusion. I figured that these would all be public meetings. What's the difference between like public information and not public information in this meeting?
Well, if you are talking about the business of this committee, and you're a committee member, then you should consider that, public information.
Okay.
If it's going on, if you're talking about it at a meeting like this, that's public information, but public documents is kind of what the other thing is.
Okay.
The FOA law exists to make sure that you have proceedings that are open to the public, that are notified to the public. But it's also there to make sure that the public has access to public documents.
Okay.
An example of something that's confidential, a committee on the council committee considers taxpayer abatement requests when they're experiencing financial hardship. And so the council will go into an executive session and hear those confidential details, and that isn't open to the public. It's hard to conceptualize what this committee might receive that would be confidential. It could happen.
It
but-
could happen, yeah, I can't think of an example, but
Would they not be confidential, the grant requests that come back asking for money from this opioid settlement? If they're asking for any financial information, like the ARPA fund application had information about them and their finances and their financial and how it works, that would have to be confidential.
Yeah, okay, that makes sense.
you generally, when people submit, I mean, a bid. Bids can be open to the public, and so what they submit could be open, but there could also be confidential information that is contained in things and.
Well, let me ask you this, if we went out, we got the thing, we sent it out, we got 10 requests back. Can we not have an executive session of this committee to review those applications? And then report back on the decisions of who was going to be awarded, but without all their personal information.
The Freedom of Access Act allows executive sessions only under a listed number, for a listed number of reasons. There's about 7 or 8 of them. And you can only go into executive session for those reasons. And if it fits in there, then you can go into executive session and talk about it. If it doesn't, then you can't. So you'd have to
We'd have to
talk
look
about
at
it in
the-
public.
I have to say this. Okay, so the difference would be in how we handle ARPA is that we sent those applications off to another group that reviewed those and made recommendations and scored them. It was outside of the council committee that was doing that. So they scored it. They saw the confidential information, but it wasn't actually televised until it came back. And so this would be, the thought was that we were going to review any applications that came back in, because these are the people that were brought together working with the specific backgrounds that we're looking for. So I guess there's some gray area there, how we would do that.
It's hard for me to
Yeah.
All right,
analyze.
as we go along and we come up with the actual form that we're gonna ask people to fill out that are
Mhm.
interested in taking advantage of the opioid settlement money, then you'll be looking at it anyway to make sure that legally we've met what we have to meet. We've done that before. for
If you
applications.
submit it to the legal department, we'll look at it, yeah.
And then, so you'd be aware of that, and then you'll also. You can attend the meeting if you want with the discussion when we're looking at those. Just to make sure we're doing it the way it should be done. We don't want them to get tossed out because we made a faux pas.
I have one more question, sorry.
I'm sorry,
I have one more question, sorry.
Go ahead.
If we're done with that one. What about communication from people on this board to the county one with the money? How does that gonna work? Cause I know we talked last time about being in communication with them to make sure we're not doing the same things.
oh, that's right, that was brought up.
Well, communication with staff is always okay. You can
I don't know if
communicate with,
everybody on that board is staff, yeah. Or is it
Yeah,
considered staff? I don't know.
yeah.
yeah,
But communicating with one of your members with the county, would that member be authorized by the committee to make that communication? Was
That's
that-
what I'm asking, yeah. We're
Yeah,
allowed
I
to
mean-
talk to them about what's going on over here so we can coordinate with what they've got going on over there. That's kind of something we had talked
The-
about before. I just wanna make sure I'm not breaking any.
Yeah, the coordination has to be authorized by the committee for you to be doing that sort of
Okay.
thing.
So we need to like make that like official if we're gonna do it.
Yeah,
Okay.
And it probably should be done in public forum.
yeah, in open session, yeah.
it may come to the point that you'd like to have a joint meeting with them.
Yeah.
As we move along to really get a sense of what directions we're going in. That might be a way of opening the door of communication, and they'll understand what we're doing, we'll see what they're doing. Other questions? Anybody up there got their hand up? No. So
Talk
you,
about the guidelines.
yeah, if you're done with that, so if you use that one. Okay. I think they may. And there should be,
I have one of my own.
I think they were, good shot. I said they were. Thank you. Teach you something.
So. I don't know if the people on Zoom have their copies of these, but. This is, what we've handed out is Schedule B to the memorandum of understanding. Regarding the allowed uses for the opioid settlement funds. It's a broad document. You can see if you just go through the capital letters, treating opioid use disorder, supporting people in treatment and recovery, connect people who need help to the help they need. And there are detailed within each one of these categories. Address the needs of criminal justice involved persons. Address the needs of pregnant or parenting women and their families, babies with neonatal abstinence syndrome. I'm not gonna go through all of this, but these are the approved uses that are allowed, and the city in using this opioid settlement funds has to have at least 85% of the funds need to be used for these approved uses. If the committee wants to recommend a use that falls outside of this, that can equal no more than 15% of the overall usage of the funds. And there also are reporting requirements that have to be met if you're recommending use, or if the council actually votes to approve use of something that's outside of this broad list of uses. And so I don't really have that much to say about this. I just, you can read it and learn about the approved uses in, this state of Maine, memorandum of understanding regarding the entities that were involved in the settlements. And I would encourage you to take it home and read it at your leisure for your own information.
Are there any new federal executive orders that nullify any of the uses listed here?
I don't know, there are not. These were multi-district litigation lawsuits that were settled. And they are in essence, private matters, even though many of the plaintiffs were municipalities and states and subdivisions of states. So it's not federal jurisdiction.
Thank you.
Good question. Other comments on this document or? This will be helpful once we get started. You've had a chance to read it over and there still may be some areas that will look at it. It looks like it's okay and you look at it again and you think, maybe not so much. And
If there's a gray area, we have national counsel that represents us on these matters and also local counsel. And the national counsel is, they've been doing this. It takes up a big part of their work. And so, our attorney, our national counsel is very easy to get a hold of and very helpful in this regard. So we can go to her with any gray area questions.
anything else for David? Before we move on?
All right.
You're welcome to stay. I know you're.
Thanks.
I know you want to.
I'm gonna head out, but come back if you need me.
Thank you. Okay, that didn't take as long as I thought it might. All right, well. What are your thoughts? Do you want to get out your topics that you brought in? We can take a look at those. It'll be interesting to see what we come up with for at least the first round of things that could potentially be recommended.
How many different things are gonna be recommended, or is that not known yet?
I think it depends on the scope of the projects that are brought up to be talked about. We mentioned having ones that are maybe more urgent than others, so you might have a short-term one that you could get something implemented right away. And then you might have several that are gonna take more time to put them together and get them started, and that would be more of a long-term thing. I might as well ask for now, would you be prepared for the next meeting to maybe talk a little bit about the actual financial amounts that we'll be looking at? Because I think that's gonna, it's definitely gonna play a part in what we do with the topics that we have and the decisions that are made to go forward with. Now, the immediate ones might be some grant money even kicking around somewhere that we could help with to keep it going or get it started. But the longer term projects, I think we're gonna need to remember, the idea is not to have these projects end up being on the back of the taxpayers.
Right.
And that will be brought up often as we talk about the different things, because taxpayers are very leery right now, what's gonna be put on them several years down the road. But we want the money to be there long term, so. Jamie, you have your hand up.
Yeah, thanks. I have, I have a project that I didn't bring. Um, however, my question is this. I read through the list of accepted uses and prioritized uses. And then in between the last time we met and now, the reconciliation budget passed. And there are a number of things in that are currently being funded that, for example, are listed towards the top of the priorities. I'll take naloxone as one of those as an example. So today in our community, we have plenty of naloxone. And so my priority today might be very different than if we lived in a world without naloxone. And until we know what is in the federal budget, we really have no idea of what kinds of resources we are going to have available. As Jason mentioned last time, SAMHSA has been dismantled. Cuts to programs are about $1 billion in funding. All of the primary prevention funding for substance use prevention in the state of Maine is funded by SAMHSA funding. So I just wanted to, this is something I've been thinking about since our last meeting together. And I think that my priorities today or last week or last year quite possibly will be different than my priorities in 4 months.
Can I speak to that just for a moment? Okay, so we have this purse or this pocket of money, and that doesn't have anything to do with what may be down the road. In other words, we don't have a crystal ball. So I just think we should stay focused on what we do have and figure out a way, because it's urgent to get the money that we do have out there. In other words, maybe you're right, maybe Narcan won't be available in 6 months, supported by the federal government, but we don't know that. And I don't think that we should be held up or restrained, trying to think about what might be in the future. So, I would be, personally, I would be a little leery of trying to make projections or to live in fear of, what might be coming down the road. And I agree with you that there is gonna be things are gonna be a lot different. We can see that, we all know that. But with this limited amount of funds that we have to deal with and we have to spend in certain ways, then, we don't need, maybe not to concern ourselves with ASAM and, what goes on with the federal government at this juncture. And, that's just my opinion, to keep it simple. I like to keep things really simple and focused, and
Scott,
so.
even in your the project that you brought forward, the partners you listed are all funded with federal funding.
Now,
Many
give
of
me
them.
give me an
So-
example.
I don't have it in front of me, but the things that you listed and the supports that your project is relying on, a lot of those supports are funded federally. So a lot of the stuff, for example, I don't know how many of your folks are funded by SNAP Ed or receive SNAP Ed or SNAP.
Right.
So food stamps, right?
Mhm.
So there's been a proposed elimination of that. And so all I'm saying is that even people who apply for projects based on a world today may not be able to complete those projects because they won't have the same landscape of resources that they thought they were going to have. And I'm not, that's just what I've been thinking. And maybe there's a way to keep that in mind as we also move forward. Like maybe there's a way to do both. I just think it would be honestly really foolhardy to distribute all of this funding without looking at the elephant in the room, which is a landscape for our people and the people that we serve and the people that are impacted by this that really is probably going to change for us.
Okay, Lisa, you have your hand up.
Hi there, thank you. I completely agree with both Jamie and Scott in that we don't know, right, what is going to happen, and it is uncertain. And I also agree that I think that it's imperative that we come up with something that just moves forward and puts it out there, because these funds have got to move, and there is a need, and the likelihood that the need for them is going to increase in the next couple of months is important. And hopefully, as we get closer and that money comes out, in the world, according to Lisa's vision, right, that, the timing would be kind of kismic, in that, if we actually can get this going, we'd have a little clarity. And as long as we don't just sit on it. And that I if we're talking about fears a little bit, I think that I would just reiterate again that would be my fear. I think that it's important that this committee comes up with a way to move these funds in an expedited fashion, and to hopefully come up with something that, we've already know that the city knows how to do the ARPA funds. If we could do something like that, iron out some of the wrinkles and get these first pockets of money moving out and available, and then spend a little bit more time on what we do longer term. That's some of what my hope and vision is. Thank you.
Thank you.
David, your hand is up.
Hi, am I unmuted? Yes. Hi, I'm Mackenzie. I'm one of Jenna's co-workers with the Moss Center. I have a brief comment to hopefully assuage a little bit of this, and then I have more of a process question. So a lot of communities are doing what is best for them. For example, Oxford County is doing an RFP application. They have about $720,000 available. They have 500,000 of it available for their first round of funding. And they do know they're getting, that is to promote sustainability of their funds. And then my other question is, I'm hearing a little bit of talk about a grant application process, but then I'm also hearing a little bit of talk about bringing projects to the table. How exact is it? A combination of the two? I guess I'm just a little confused about what your guys' process is going to be.
I don't think that's been determined yet. I think we're in that phase of determining. There's not been a process clearly defined. Am I correct?
You're correct.
And that we are at that place, and I'm not sure where we are in taking comments from outside the committee.
Right. We are right now just trying to make a plan, and it's a multi-pronged plan as far as we got to the grant process by figuring that might be a nice way to really have people apply for the funds. The rest of it is we're still working on guidelines. We're still, the topics that are being submitted are topics for the whole committee to look at and assess, whether it's even topics that they want to pursue, short-term, long-term. So it's really a fact-finding time for this committee. Initially, it was not going to include, public comment, because we haven't had a chance to really do what we're tasked to do. And maybe down the road we may, but at this point, it has not been something that we had planned on doing. So,
Because that would be done through city council and
yes,
at the city council level. That
our role, and I don't know if you were here for the first meeting, but our role is really, we're acting in an advisory capacity to make recommendations to the city council for their debate and final decision on how this money is going to be spent. So any of those interactions with the city council would definitely have public comment, would definitely, be vetted on that level by the council. We're just doing the legwork. We're, making a plan and presenting some things for their review and either approval or not. So their recommendations only from us to them.
Awesome.
Okay. So,
So is now the time when we throw a couple things out there?
yes.
Okay.
Absolutely.
I'm gonna throw a couple of things out there. One was short-term, one was long-term. This short-term one would not require an RFP. It would require, I sent it out, all of you a copy of it. I don't know if you've had a chance to look at it. But most of it is regarding, housing. And the basis, housing is one of the base, is the base of the pyramid. Housing and food is the base of the pyramid. And this would, I don't know if you wanna keep it, throw it away or whatever, but it's a short-term thing that might provide some stability. And I named it the Pathways to Stability Recovery House. Now, I'm speaking of recovery housing because that's what I know best. And that's what I can speak to and know what the need is. I'll clarify that a little bit. We have 21 recovery homes and 180 something beds now. And we get 5 applications a day, every single day. Now, granted that a lot of them, not a lot, but a percent is from not in the immediate Bangor area. I mean, we have people that apply from out of state, for instance. They would not be included in this. This would just be for people that are in the Bangor area. To have a scholarship fund to allow for them to have housing. And I don't mean with Fresh Start, it can be with the Oxford House or any NAR or MAR certified recovery residents in the state to get people in, because most of the people that we deal with do not have the funding to come in, and we're very low barrier. Sometimes we take people with nothing, with no money, and go on their word, and sometimes it works and sometimes it doesn't. And our screening process is such that we can usually hopefully figure it out. So that is a short-term thing that requires no RFP, but that was just mine. And, I can pass it around, or I'll email it all to you, or you can say, no, I don't want to do this. That's okay too. The other one was more long-term, and we would require an RFP, which is the Overdose Prevention Center plan that would have to be, trimmed, obviously. There's things in there that I put in there that may or may not apply. We may or may not want to do. We may or may not want to rely upon anything to do with state or government funds that might be listed, that I have listed in here in the Overdose Prevention Center plan that I had that would require an RFP. So that's kind of where I am. So I'm just starting it off. I don't know if that's where we want to start. I don't know any of it, so.
Well, this is,
Thank you for sharing.
right. This is the time to share what your thoughts are and what your top priorities were,
Mhm.
short-term, long-term.
Yep,
And then the committee will have to discuss all of them.
Yeah.
And prioritize, keep some, not, whatever.
there's my 2 for right now.
Yeah.
And-
And I'm sure there'll be others added as we go along.
Yep,
So, anybody else wanna share?
I got a couple ideas, but I also have like a conversation topic in general. That's kind of attached to what was being shared before, where we don't know the sustainability of future funding. Would it not be imperative for us to make sure whatever we're dumping money into is an investment that can then sustain itself?
Ideally,
Like
that,
almost like a rule, because otherwise
Yeah.
we could just be dumping money into something that goes away as soon as federal funding goes away in the future,
Mhm.
which seems like a
you
waste
mean
of
as
money.
soon as the settlement fund goes away, it's not federal funding.
No, I mean, like if we were to open a place, right?
Mhm.
And then that place was going to be relying on future funding from somewhere else.
Sure.
And then that got pulled. Now we just dumped all that money into a place that got closed 18 months later or something.
Right, but we're also dealing with money that's out there for till 2038, right? Which is a very long period of time in the.
Are we guaranteed to get all of that money?
Yeah,
That's already a guaranteed thing.
That
Yeah.
I
was-
wasn't understanding that entirely. I still think it's
But it's a fun
a point of a strong.
It
point of
is.
contention.
Yeah.
It's not
Right.
unlimited, right?
It's not unlimited.
correct. It's
And
not
that's what-
It's
unlimited.
like 3.4 or whatever.
Total, yeah.
Yeah,
That's what we've asked, Carolyn to bring to the next meeting.
right, with
What does
cash
that-
available.
Right, what does that look like
Mhm.
annually?
Mhm.
And then that will help you make some decisions for sustainability.
It definitely, I agree that it should be, whatever we do needs to be sustainable, but how long, you know, are we don't, like I said, we don't have a crystal ball, we don't know what 10 years down the road is gonna look like.
That's true.
I agree with that. Zoe. So I had a couple ideas. One of them, I did, after looking at Scott's proposals, I feel ill-equipped and unprepared, because you did a great job. Mine are a couple sentences that I scribbled in my notebook at this point. I think one of the huge service gaps that we have in this area that definitely needs to be addressed is a 30 to 90 day detox, not necessarily detox, but post-detox program for people to be housed in while they're waiting to go into residential rehab so that they're not going to fresh start and then bouncing right back to detox, or the streets and then bouncing right back to detox. It's not helping anybody doing that. I think it's a huge need. The other thing too would be setting some money aside so that people could open up Oxford houses, which are self-sustaining. It takes a little small amount of money to open them, and the people living in them continue to run them. For example, when I lived at the Oxford House over on Union Street, the 2 units next to us were closed. We put $2,000 into each of those. That was in 2019 or 2020. They're still open today with it, and having served many, many people with that small investment. So I think that would be a good idea.
Well, I think we agree that housing is an important thing. It's the
Absolutely.
base of a pyramid and,
So,
yeah,
I was just gonna say, I agree with your, that in between period, between detox and living in recovery residence, it's like we're dropping people.
Mhm.
People are
people
dropping.
die. Right?
Yeah.
I also talked a little bit with Bangor Housing just tentatively, because they're the ones who are currently managing the Oxford houses that exist. And they said tentatively, maybe, yes, she's gonna talk to me more about tomorrow, just in general, so.
of course, we'd have to, I know that the Oxford houses are not MAR certified or NAR certified, which is an issue, for general assistance in particular, being able to, for people to go there to get any help. So I would think that they may want to consider being certified. I don't know if that is something that can be done, Scott, or not, but you could.
Should be done.
Yeah,
It wasn't done. It's like the key difference being there's no like administrative staff or like anybody like running it specifically. Just
right,
people live there doing it. So when they look at it, they're like, well, that's, we've got to put up this, something stupid, like $200 or something,
yeah,
like the fees.
yeah,
And I don't want to do that.
right,
So like, that's why it hasn't been done, but I think if we were going to implement something like that in the future, it would definitely be essential. Especially because they live in Bangor Housing, so all the stuff you require is required by Bangor Housing anyway,
right,
so.
yeah.
I agree.
Mine was more of a, I'm sorry, did I jump across?
You did not.
No.
Okay,
You're fine.
mine was more of a prevention look at it. School resource officers at schools giving presentations or getting members of the public, I would do presentations. But I also want to make sure that we don't leave out the elderly. I've noticed an uptick in elderly overdoses because they have Alzheimer's, dementia, they mess their pills up, and they have to go to the ED and get Narcan. So I want to make sure that we don't just focus on the people with opioid use disorder, but for prevention, we should focus on all. So I mean, it's like speaking at Lions Club meetings, speaking at, anywhere, like elderly people have that weekly meeting they do or whatever. I would go sit at the McDonald's where they all sit every morning and just discuss it with them, like being out there in, which I think would also help with, people knowing about it, education about it.
Mhm.
That was mine. I didn't have to,
Did Dare go away completely?
yeah.
In most communities, yeah.
Yeah.
It's still in some communities.
Yeah, they do it in Dexter, I know, cause my grandkids go there,
It's been
but
reinvented.
yeah.
It's been great.
Yeah, but it's still out there.
Oh, for
in
sure.
some
It
form,
sure
There should be something like
Because
this,
that would be prevention.
right,
For
yeah.
sure.
So I don't
It's,
know.
I was just gonna comment about DARE, and it has fallen out of favor. I don't think it has had the outcomes that it was intended to have. So just from a prevention standpoint, that's why that's gone byway. But I do like your idea of like sitting at spots where people who normally wouldn't have access to that sort of information would get it for sure.
Mhm.
So Jamie, there's no alternative program similar to DARE for the schools?
Well, there is a lot of programming that happens within schools. So there's a lot of evidence-based programming that schools do around substance use prevention. So sometimes there was an effort through the governor's office a couple of years ago to increase that curriculum in schools. And schools are really a hard spot to work in because there is a lot of demands on schools. And the needs of the kids are incredibly, some of them incredibly high. The teachers have a lot of demands on them, and I think people normally look to schools to solve a lot of problems that are really not solvable. And so I think schools are definitely doing their best. Every school that we work with is doing a lot and doing their best, but it's really hard. I don't know if now would be the time to talk about some of those slides that Jason sent, which talked about adverse childhood experiences and trauma. And those are the kinds of things that schools are dealing with. And so, yeah, I hope that answers your question.
I did. All right.
Um, just for process, if we could do the ideas, and then I'm happy to talk about those slides a little bit. I didn't bring them with me, but
Okay.
would anybody else like to share their ideas?
I'll go.
You have ideas. I know you have ideas.
Well, no, I believe we have a program sustainability problem on the horizon. I think Jamie nailed it, and I think we need to forecast ahead. In the short term, what the agencies that are providing, we know there's a significant population that our agencies are supporting.
Yeah.
Including city public health. And I think if we could ask Jamie to forecast ahead what it looks like at public health, and then we might somehow, maybe through public health, engage some of the agencies that are already providing services to a significant population. If the funding goes away and we create new programs, what do we do with all the folks that are no longer receiving the
Right,
services that they
Maybe we can help
currently
them,
need?
yeah.
And I think to Jamie's point, we need to look at that, and that is also a mechanism to move the money out a little quicker, which is indeed what the city council is asking of us.
That is true.
Yes.
Can I ask a question?
Sure.
I don't know if I missed an email, but I thought we were supposed to get like a list of the programs being used now in Bangor, and was it the Moss people?
Yeah, I think they had said that, but
Yeah,
they were supposed to say, I think there were several things on that.
I just wanted to make sure I didn't miss an
There
email.
was also like an 80-page document.
Yeah,
yeah,
It's
the
probably
profile.
in there somewhere.
Yeah, it was on the end of that document. It was the second round. We
Oh,
sent
okay.
it. So
Okay.
it's that you do have access. If it's on email, if it's not printed, then it is there.
Okay,
As long
Thank
as
you.
as well as the list of the financial, was listed in that same email that I sent to David that he forwarded on, so you all can look at what the actuals into Bangor are and what the expected amounts to
Okay.
Bangor are. That's
I will
all.
look.
I sent that all to him, so and I asked if he'd prefer that I sent it to everyone or just him. So I kind of was using him as a gatekeeper of information.
Yeah.
So
I'll have to go back and look. Thank you.
I'm sure he sent it out. So you talked about Jamie doing some forecast.
Well, I don't wanna put Jimmy in the spot here, but I mean, if
Well,
he's
it would
able
be
to forecast,
her
if
thumb
he's
on-
able to
yeah,
forecast
it would be her thing.
what the immediate needs may be versus what the long-term needs may be with a funding shortage or anticipated
Mhm.
funding shortage, that might help this committee. And we might ask the same, maybe through public health, what other agencies that are currently working in partnership with Bangor Public Health, what they forecast the
Right.
shortages may be with the anticipated loss of federal funds.
Okay,
Yeah, I think one of the, so some of the issues are that, some of this just isn't clear. So, for example, a lot of the SAMHSA funding is, some of the SAMHSA responsibilities, as I understand it, and also funding is transitioning over to, the AHA, America Healthy Again, Make America Healthy Again administration. Anyway, what's not clear is how much of that money is going, whether it will continue to fund the things that we receive funding for, how, at what level it will fund those things. And so I think right now, those are just things we don't know. And I know that I probably sound like I'm fear mongering, but I don't mean to. And I think there will be some opportunities in Maha. What those are, I don't know. The other thing I don't think we're thinking enough about generally is that it takes time for money to move around the federal government to the states and then to the communities. And that's also a structure I see that has disintegrated and will need to be rebuilt. So it doesn't, even if, so there are going to be delays, I think, with money coming in and around for those reasons. And those are real barriers to doing the work that is currently happening.
anything?
I just ask for the sake of clarity, because I want to make sure that I'm understanding. Are we saying that these services may not be funded and that we should be using this money to fund those services if they run out of money?
That's what it sounds like.
Is that what's being said?
What I'm saying is that we are planning, like we're making a plan based on an infrastructure that exists today. And I think there's a good chance that the infrastructure that exists today is not going to exist in a few months. Or it could look incredibly, it will look incredibly different. And so, you know, I don't know how much of what we have now is gonna disappear. I have no way of knowing that. And so I'll bet that it looks a lot different, and that's why I hesitate about making such a plan around these funds. It's not that these funds can be used for all of that stuff, but the way we're planning to use these funds relies on a structure that may not be there.
We have a little bit of a concrete example for that. I can share. So in our organization, in just the grants that I manage personally within my program, I'm going to be losing over $1 million a year that have been zeroed out of the current budget starting October. So that money's gone. That means no more support groups. That means no more staffing for recovery homes. That means no more HIV testing kits. That means no more staffing for outreach to encampments, things like that. So that's sort of where we are. Like, and whether or not that gets replaced in the future with new grants and new opportunities, we don't know. There's no list of where that money may be going. And so I worry that we have to build some sort of infrastructure around being able to sustain a minimal level of public health safety for all of our part, for the whole entire Bangor community, and, you know, and the greater Bangor community, because we are a hub. So yeah, so I think that that's a very concrete example. I know other agencies are in very similar situations, and so there is budgets have been approved. The grants that we have that have been encumbered through federal processes have been are in the 25-26 annual budget, but the 26 annual budget starts new with the new administration. And so that's, there may be a little bit of wiggle room there, but there is not a guarantee that any of that funding will be renewed in a new opportunity. And I think that's for all of our systems are feeling that right now, whether it's safety systems, whether it's substance use systems, or whether it's housing, or whether it's education. So,
So are we saying that we should just sit on our hands?
no. I don't think anybody's saying.
What I'm hearing,
It sounds that way, doesn't it?
I'll just ask really straightforward, just kind of like, are we saying that because we're going to lose these programs, we should use this money to sustain or replace those programs, which is kind of what it sounds like everybody's dancing around?
Yeah.
The problem is, if you're talking about millions and millions of dollars that's being lost between all these agencies, 1 million or even 3.4 is not going to sustain all of that.
Correct.
So I think, circling back to my original point, whatever we spend that money on needs to be something that can sustain itself.
Mhm.
So I have three ideas, and I have broken them down by potential funding pockets as well. So first one deals with current situations and can be done through the city currently, if so chosen. And that is to stand up an intensive case management program specifically for homeless individuals with comorbidities of substance use or HIV infection. And that's a third of the current money in the bank. So the next one is a set aside specifically existing for current public health programs implemented by Bangor Public Health. That is also a third. And then the next third of money,
No, wait, what was it? What was that? You say that again? I didn't understand.
a third of the chunk of existing funds that are in the bank currently is a set aside for current programs being implemented by Bangor Public Health.
Okay, thank you.
That includes their homeless outreach, their HIV testing, their housing vouchers, whatever the city and the, you know, kind of determines in that. And the last third that's available in the bank right now go out in two ways. A couple short-term RFPs that go to existing substance use prevention, treatment, or recovery programs. And that gets implemented right away in this fiscal year. And then 2 or 3 long-term projects that get RFP'd out for the same category. So treatment, prevention, education, recovery. The rest of the funding that comes in over the next, not 10 years, it's 13 years. Gets RFP'd out on a regular basis through those existing, it gets added to the renewal of those current contracts.
is there anything in your plan under case management that involves mental health?
Yes, so they would have to, comorbidities.
Comorbidities,
So
okay.
mental health. So what we're seeing right now is that even if we do place somebody in a recovery home, they may have lived homeless or housing unsecured their whole entire life. So there's no, especially a lot of people that are involved in the current HIV crisis that we're having here in Bangor right now. We have people who have never been housed stably housed their whole entire lives. So we have to work to ensure that we are helping those people to not spread HIV through the means in which they spread HIV. And that means either through needle sharing or sexual contact, right? Or pregnancy. And so making sure that we have case managers is not a case management model that exists anywhere in the world right now, right? Like, this is one of those things where we would have to create a system that is so intense that it's going to take a bunch of resources for a small number of people. But if we don't do that, the public health implications, I think, are pretty severe. The RFP process, which is on the other side of that, allows those other agencies, either in the short term and long term sort of thinking, to be able to continue some of that programming that we know may get lost. It's not gonna be enough money. It's not going to be enough to do. But
It'll help.
yeah,
I have a question about your third.
yeah.
You said that the RFPs, that's gonna be your RFP program basically. But then you said, continuing each year with the funds that we get, who would be able to apply? The people that already have RFPs with us?
So that's a process decision we could come to,
Yeah.
it could be talked about, but.
Yeah.
So if a person, let's say in the first round, you're awarded an RFP.
Right.
For, I don't know, $100,000. Then over the next couple of years, the next 13 years, there are additional pockets of money that are coming in at a very specific amount. They're not,
Mhm.
so you may not get the $50,000 every single year,
Okay,
but there could be a schedule of what you would get for the length of whatever the.
oh, I
the
see, what you mean. So
contract.
they know what they're getting in advance.
Yeah.
Okay.
So there would be renewals,
Mhm.
basically, and if, let's say, somebody decided not to renew a contract, then that would allow it to go back out for RFP.
A new
for that.
RFP, okay,
So that you could maintain a certain number of contracts within the geographical area.
I understand that now, thank you.
I've got a question on each of your thirds.
And that was just simple restaurant math thinking, so like, that is not a,
As far as HIV stuff is concerned, isn't that like a special interest area where there is money available in general?
no longer.
As of this, okay. That was my first question. Second question is, who normally funds public health?
It's a system of, I would say, it's like an umbrella of, there are many pipelines that come into, there's not one channel of funding for public health.
Let me re-ask the question. Is that like a city organization that's like gets tax money?
I think Jamie would know.
Some, a portion of what they get is tax money, but a portion, and I don't know what the city of Bangor's public funding source is. I mean, as far as tax dollars go.
Forgive my ignorance. I just.
No,
I don't know either.
but then
Oops, sorry.
a certain percentage, not something we could find out. I mean, the public health division has, yeah, but then SAMHSA grants, CDC grants, HRSA grants, all of those federal entities that provide funding to municipalities and nonprofits are going to be losing some of those fundings. And so the public health division is going to be losing money. The city will be in that way, the city itself will be losing money that is not tax dollars, not direct city of Bangor tax dollars, yeah.
Just to kind of, my point in thinking behind it was just like in general, right?
Yeah.
This money is gonna come here one time, this $3.4 million. If we're talking about putting a Band-Aid on a bullet wound that's gonna bleed out services that are gonna end anyway, that doesn't make sense to me. We should be spending the money on something that's going to create something that's going to live through that process.
Unless we need.
Even if it's like one service, right?
Unless we need HIV,
No, I'm not
Yeah,
trying to
right.
minimize that.
Yeah,
I'm
right,
not-
right.
I'm really not.
we have the money to apply to it.
Yeah.
We would be foolish not to do that in lieu of creating a new project.
Are you talking about the intensive case management?
No, for example,
That care.
you're gonna lose $1 million. Obviously, we can't fund $1 million. But if you pull out a couple of projects within there that are critical to our community, and we'll say HIV testing and so forth, then maybe we should consider funding that immediately, because that is an impact in our region.
Because
And
once
that's what I was talking about earlier, where we need to think about pushing some money out to help sustain programs that are likely not going to continue.
I totally get behind that.
Yeah.
Okay, that makes sense to me.
Because once we resolve, and I do believe in the term resolve, it doesn't ever end, right? But there's always a risk that we will have new cases, right? But once somebody is treated and on treatment, they are not able through biology to transmit again, right? So if they stay adherent to their medicines, if they have that sort of support where they can reduce, suppress their viral load to a point of undetectable, they cannot transmit ever again, right? And so that's
That's cool to know.
Yeah.
Didn't realize that.
Yeah.
and so, and I don't mean to take up so much space at all, but
You're back over here.
but I did send out some slides based on
I didn't have a chance to look, so sorry.
A training that I went to last week that was really important for those of us who are responding to the situation here in Bangor right now, right? And what we're seeing is that, like the housing situation that I talked to, where we have people in this outbreak who have never been housed there or have had no secure housing their whole entire lives. No one's ever taught somebody how to sign a lease, how to negotiate that my steps are broken and the landlord needs to fix that. You know, how to fill out the voucher form, how to show up to a doctor's appointment on time, because that's never been a priority in your family, right? That's never been. And so if we don't have people in the community that can take that responsibility on to work with people to get them to that level of self-sustainability, right? We're not going to change the dynamic here. We're going to always have a group of people who are going to need that level of service that we cannot provide. So.
Were you
Yeah.
talking more like caseworkers?
Yeah,
Is that what
yeah,
you're-
yeah, and it doesn't, like, we're talking one or two people for
Yeah.
20, like, we're not
Yeah.
talking a whole, we're not talking a hospital's worth of case managers, we're talking one or two case managers whose job it is to work within a certain designated population, and that might change. The HIV situation may change, right?
Right.
And that may not be the need, but if we have that system in place, it could be the next crisis. It could be for whatever it is, it could be,
Next one.
yeah, but they're set up to be at that level of intensity.
So let's talk about a process. So what are we talking about in a process? Are we going to take a third, we're just supervisor member,
Yeah.
a third that is going to RFP, right? And a third that's for a designated project, is that what we're thinking? And a third to public health, is that the process we're thinking of doing?
It's just what I said, I don't know.
I know, but that sounds,
Yeah.
that's.
That's the process I would get behind, but I would get behind other people's processes too, like it's,
Yeah.
like, it's not.
Well, and in that process, you talked about,
It doesn't have to be third.
Right,
you know.
right, we can create a funding formula based on.
I just wondered if that's the direction we wanted to talk about or focus on, is coming up with. Well, I think that's a great idea, coming up with some to go to public health, some to go to an RFP, and some to go to whatever, or like a scholarship fund is how I set up, with a
I'm quite
scholarship
sure
fund
there's
for
probably
housing.
others in public health. Other
That's
programs.
right, but the scholarship fund, like, say you wanted to do a scholarship
Yeah.
fund, but you wanted to do.
Education.
Education to youth, right?
Yeah.
Yeah.
You both could apply for the available amount to do that. right?
Yeah.
Like, so
So
that
put that
it
as
doesn't put any
RFP,
limits,
yeah,
yeah, it doesn't, but it doesn't hinder anybody from having a creative idea as long as it meets the needs that are in this, right?
Feel like I'm behind because I wasn't here
Sure.
last time we met. I just want to echo the uncertainty, and the bedrock is thin and it's getting thinner. I guess and this is just the world that I live in, I think about the intersection with child welfare, I think about what's ballooning. And there's a lot of need currently that is not being met, and it's going to get worse. And so I guess for me, I kind of lean into the idea of what can we get out there quickly and what can we use now to at least start to stabilize what we know is going to happen. I think I want to start doing like gaps analysis on what after last week's event, where we're all going to be and where we need to be. But I want to echo, yeah, if we're not able to feed people, I don't know how responsible it is to be talking about, scholarships and things like that are going to be relying on
ghosts, basically, of programs that aren't there anymore.
One of the things that in my work that we've experienced in different organizations at the state level, at other federal programs, and at the local level where I am now, is that RFP process allows us to have a community response, right? So there may be ideas and solutions out there that even the best of us at this table won't come up with, but there will be a small organization that's doing some of this work that has a really good success rate already. They just need another boost to take it to that next level. They get to put that in an RFP and present that to the city to say here, and you put things in the RFP, like tell us about how this is successful. Tell us about how your success rate around this. Tell us how you know that, right? And so I think that it provides the community a chance to respond in a way, and that we may not. So we
Right.
don't prescribe it, right?
Right.
Like one of the most creative and the most successful programs are ones that come from the community itself, right? And so I think that like for some people, that housing opportunity might be a great opportunity and take care of a certain need. But there's also maybe the education or a food program, right? That together, all those things happening at the same time create a bigger difference. And so I'd love to see that
Yeah,
response, and we may get more ideas as a committee, or the city council may get more ideas if other funding opportunities to come up to say, oh, when we did that, that was really successful, or we didn't fund that one program, but it was a really neat idea. Maybe we can go back out now and refund that.
right.
I know that there are a lot of programs about working with law enforcement and other entities within the city to reduce that tension, to reduce some of that stuff. And so looking for programs that increase partnerships, increase, that access, so that, when we're at a table, there's, we have a relationship, we know what each other's expectations are, and that kind of stuff.
And I guess I conceptualized as a part of this is the strategy of prioritizing what the need is, which is really hard to guess at this minute.
Well, I don't know, I mean, there have been two new cases. So the count now is up to 24.
It's definitely the priority, I would say.
And all of those people have experienced homelessness within the last year, or houselessness in the last year. All those people have engaged in substance use behavior, and all of those people who have been infected are also co-infected with hepatitis C. So, and then I think I think a large percentage. So let's, I think that that's an immediate need and an immediate response that could really make a huge.
And as of this week, all of those people no longer have access to any case management services.
Correct.
We have one, and I'm just gonna
None of them are
mention
working with
something.
Kath.
None of them,
It's different level of case management, so this is highly intensive, it's specific to people.
Who is doing that?
There is nobody doing it.
nobody now.
As of,
Who was?
So there was
Um,
the Ryan White Part C, there's several levels, Ryan White Part B, Part C, two different case management sort of entities or programs that put resources out for people with HIV. The Part C program for Northern Maine was run by Regional Medical Center of Lubec. They gave up their federal contract. It was under $100,000 a year anyway to serve 150 people in Northern Maine who are impacted by HIV. That no longer exists. The people that we are seeing in the outbreak are not people who had even accessed that at this point, for the most part, because they don't have the resources to show up for an appointment to get their Ryan White paperwork filled out. They do not have stable housing to get their food card mailed to them. So, there are some steps between certain levels of case management and diagnosis.
That's certainly a desperate situation. You're correct, because we're housing one individual right now that has never been housed. Requires a tremendous amount of our attention, really, and and he's extremely intent on staying clean and sober. So we don't kick people out for
Right.
that, if they're intent, as long as there's no tremendous behavioral issues, but there's so much more involved. You know, they, like, he's never been housed, so he doesn't understand that you don't thaw your meat on your bed, you know, that you're gonna have for supper. Just a lot of basic stuff like that we do.
Yeah.
And,
Basic life skills.
basic life skills, and it is extremely intensive as far as being personnel involved. And, you know, we have 180 beds and one individual like that, so that requires a tremendous amount of our time. So I definitely agree that, to have
And if you
somebody,
had someone to say, can you help me with this piece
Yeah.
of this, that we knew that anybody, no matter where they live, right? What, how, because Housing First
It's
is
in
is a
Bangor.
great model, but it doesn't always work, right? Like there's there's
Right.
always.
Everybody deserves housing, not everybody's ready for it, sorry.
Correct,
that's
right?
right, yeah,
So-
he's ready for it, he's just,
Yeah.
it's just a huge learning curve for
Yeah.
everybody, us too, you know.
The way my mind was working when I was, because there are all of those things, I know they're getting prioritized for housing vouchers, which is super helpful because
Yeah.
we can actually get them housed. And if there's no longer intensive case management, which my understanding was there was, so I was hearing everything being said like duplication of services, which would make no sense. But if that's not there, then yeah, obviously that's a huge priority.
There is no duplication of services going on for these people that we are working with right now. I know that sometimes duplication of services happen, but there is a huge team of people working in this city right now across multiple organizations every week to do case reviews for every single person in that. And so, and that is not a paid, I mean, we all are in our agencies doing it, but it is not a service that, it's a group of people that have come together, and Bangor Public Health has taken the lead and a lot of that to make sure that all of the entities are who have the ability to interact with the people who are affected by this situation are getting the attention around that. There's just not enough, you know, like that. We have people that have housing vouchers, but if you've ever been evicted from your apartment, you're not gonna find a place to use that voucher, right?
I worked at that for a long time, I had
Yeah.
a lot of people that were pretty
Yeah,
aggressive, so I understand.
Yeah, yeah. And so we're running into, and it's not a huge number of people. We're not talking like the whole city. We're talking a small number of people in a very hard situation that are very difficult to provide services to because of so many circumstances, right? They've never been not in crisis, right? And so when somebody comes to their door, even with good intentions, you know, I mean,
When you guys mentioned the funding is gone for caseworkers, who was doing it? What was the program, or was it several programs doing it?
so Regional Medical Center of Lubec was held the
For Northern-
the federal contract,
Okay.
and they subcontracted out to Health Equity Alliance.
Okay, and they're
Yeah.
gone.
And then when Health Equity Alliance left, Regional Medical Center of Lubec kept a couple caseworkers as direct employees. And at that level, Regional Medical Center of Lubec, for whatever reason, chose not to continue with their federal contract.
Okay,
Now, does that mean that that money can be used by another agency? That's a federal process that they have to go through to get that money. So they
Yeah.
have to do a federal application. So
no, we
any
don't. I mean, as far as our money spending, we don't have.
this
Right.
is correct.
Yeah.
That these opioid settlement funds are here.
Mhm.
Yeah, I guess I didn't realize that Heal had completely closed. I knew their heart center closed. I just didn't realize that they weren't providing case management for the people for the outbreak, because that's crazy. And that's a need that needs to be filled like pronto.
Yeah, that
Mhm.
agency, that's completely closed.
Yeah,
And
yeah, no, for sure.
disassembled.
That's like, yeah, not even really a question.
Sounds like there is definite agreement on that one project for right now that needs to be done urgently.
Yeah,
And
We're
it's,
best to implement that in a way that's gonna be successful.
and it's something that the city council can just, they can make a decision and put it out. The recommendation is
Mhm.
this, and if they need us to help put some of those aspects together, happy to do that. But as far as like, whether it's through an award or whether it's through existing case management systems in the city, So the city could say, we're gonna hire 2 new case managers and they're going to do this job. Right, and that could happen fairly quickly.
And that we could fund that
With this
every
type-
year, yeah,
Yeah.
but then continue to fund it. Maybe add some people.
And it may not be, those case managers may not have to be around for 5 or 6 years. If
Mhm.
it's dealt with in a
Right,
period
because
of time,
maybe we'll,
there may be a chance to rechannel that.
So we need to get something drafted that this committee can get behind as a recommendation to send off to them.
So just, so to make sure I understand, what we would say is we have this amount of money and this is what needs to be done. Who wants to do it? Is that the idea?
Yeah, I mean, like, I'm willing to take a stab at it and bring it to the next meeting or send it out prior to the next meeting for review. And trust me, it's not, I'm not, I'm just putting things on a page for us to consider if that point as a,
Sure.
to say something like, we, the committee, recommend that 2
Right.
new case management positions be hired for this reason.
For this particular
Right.
thing.
yeah,
My only fear about that, and forgive me for saying it, is not all case managers are created equal. And like, if we're gonna be paying people significant amount of money to do this very important job, they need to be people who do the job well. So
Right,
how do
and
we
that's-
figure that out?
That would not be our
That
job.
wouldn't be our job, right?
no,
We would be, that would be on the city's job to have their employment.
If we're gonna provide the funding to city public health, I'm pretty confident in their ability to hire
That's what they would hire the
Public
people.
health.
case managers that are
Yeah.
capable of providing the services necessary. I'm sure Jamie can speak to that a little bit.
Send it through the.
What, no disrespect meant by saying that.
No,
The
No,
reality.
makes good sense. for
So
sure.
we've all seen it too, and that's why
Yeah.
we're in some of these situations is because the system at some levels have failed, right? And so,
I think it would help the committee to understand what kind of money we're talking about,
Yes.
right? And I don't know
She's bringing that.
well, I understand that, but I don't know if we know what 2 case managers
Yeah.
are gonna cost.
Right.
You know, I think it would help us better understand what that looks like.
right, to see how much money we actually be using and what's left.
For sure.
Yeah.
For sure.
Could, if that was something that we envisioned having public health do, maybe, Jason and Jen and I can work on that. I'm committing you, sort of, Jason. I can't see you on the screen.
it's not like we don't talk about every other day anyway, right? So,
That's right. I mean, I also just want to let you guys know, this is a conversation that we have been having at the public health department, in depth for many, many, many weeks and months. So this is not out of the blue. This is a verified need. Yeah, it's a real gap in our community.
Oh, that would be helpful if
That
the
it's been this long.
3 of you want to do it.
I'm happy to put together a brief outline.
Yeah.
To then turn over to the committee, then to turn over to the city to be wordsmith. Is that okay?
Can we do it in stages? Like, if we have this important thing that needs to be done, can that go to the city council and they can approve that part and then we can just keep working on the other stuff?
Yeah.
Cool,
Yeah, actually, just to let you know, historically, there was a small bit of this funding that was used to do syringe cleanup around. And that was at the discretion of the city manager, I believe. So just in terms of process, like that can happen.
What do we have
And just full disclosure, our agency has that contract currently. So.
for cleaning?
Mhm.
We need a lot less cleaning if we had an exchange that was being run correctly.
Correct.
Yeah, yeah,
Well, we do have one, at least.
Okay.
Two,
Well,
there are 2.
I think he means exchange.
I don't think it's one specifically that's no longer open. That was just like,
that was,
Yeah,
Heal was
yeah.
doing that,
I
right?
know.
Yeah,
and so they're, everywhere. People are tend to less likely to be throwing them on the ground if they have to bring them in to get new ones.
Right, and I've seen boxes of needles unused, left up at Co-Park,
Sorry, I didn't mean to
unopened.
run a trail.
Yeah, we're doing 50 to 60 people a day currently through our current needle exchange. And
Somebody's doing the work, right?
Yeah, but is it an even exchange?
Our agency does a 1-to-1 up to 50. We have a 50 limit cap. Other agencies are permitted by state law to do that differently. There is
But you're doing it one-on-one, one-to-one.
1-to-1 up to 50. And state law allows us to do 10 if nobody has needles when they come in. So. Well, I think the state law has actually changed. Our policy is 10. So,
Carolyn, you've been quiet. Your thoughts on this process?
I mean, I think, to me, the HIV crisis is a clear immediate need
Mhm.
and a place where we can do a large amount of good quickly. And
Yeah.
so, I mean,
Let's do it.
Jamie is my official delegate, so I don't have a vote, but I think that's a place where we can make, and I mean, I have the money breakdown. I really just want to confirm that it matches what Jenna sent before, but I mean, if this is accurate, we should have over $1 million in the bank already. So, I mean, there's money to do that well, I think.
What was the number we were talking about throwing at that 600?
yeah, I mean,
Ish.
yeah,
A
you know,
third.
like, yeah, and then I know that,
A third?
yeah, I mean,
It was
and that could be, I had just broken it into thirds as a way to think about
Oh,
it.
yeah,
But we can adjust up or down in any category depending on what the actual need is. I think, case managers, we need to get a good idea of what the yearly salary and
50-ish.
plus fringe, plus insurance,
think-
there's all.
I
always
think
double.
I said
the Director of Public Health could probably give us a very precise estimate of
Mhm.
exactly what it would cost her.
Yeah.
Based on the city's existing hiring scales.
Yeah.
So it's like
Higher.
one of the, I'm sorry.
No, please.
That's like one of the things that if we're gonna spend money on it, we wanna make sure that we spend enough to get it done.
Yeah.
Cause we don't
Right.
wanna dump money just to not do it right.
Correct.
You know what I mean?
Yeah.
So that's important.
So, and that would allow multi-year funding for that, that's already in the bank, like we could make a commitment around a couple years of case management and then have a reassessment process after seeing what the results were, right? Or, setting some benchmarks like, a certain number of people in that cluster are virally suppressed. And when that happens, then we know that we've made an impact, and then we could say, this case management need is no longer what it was and redirect those funds.
I was just gonna ask you that, or redirect the case managers, could we do
To
that?
another-
To like your
yes,
thing
yeah,
about the
yeah.
people that need it.
Either to homelessness.
Yeah.
Or to education.
If
or
they, yeah.
Or
if
to
that's
youth,
something they
or,
wanna do,
yeah.
find
absolutely.
others who will.
I can pen that up.
Okay.
I can pen that up.
Oh, okay.
Just
I have-
very loosey, I'll do a loosey-goosey version and then you all can help me fix it, okay?
Right.
You got Jane.
I know, and Jen, we're always.
I'm sure you'll be able to get that done between the three of you.
Do we want it, here's just a question, and I need your guidance, and a group consensus, do you want it before the meeting or at the next meeting?
It would be nice if you could get it to us in the in-between week.
Okay.
And
Yeah.
then we'll all
Get a chance
have
to
it
look
to
at it.
come and really start the process. If we can firm that up at the next meeting, that would be great. And if we don't set sometimes the goals are gonna be kind of tight of turnarounds.
Mhm.
But if we don't do it when we have it there, it tends to get kicked down to the next meeting or down the road, and
Yeah, I don't wanna, I don't
this
wanna
is
delay.
something we can't really do that
Right.
with.
No, it's sad that these people haven't already, I guess they have on some level already receiving intensive case management, but it should be a priority, period. Should have been a priority.
It is a big fire that we need to address. There's a lot of little
That'll- that'll
fires,
get
but
real quick.
yeah, that's a
Quick,
big one.
And we're reducing the impact of substance use, right? So
Mhm.
it's not just a one-fold thing,
Mhm.
and we're also meeting some mental health needs in that, because
Right.
case manager will be
With
working.
education in there for the public
Well, it will, I think that's a different.
as it starts,
Yeah.
that's another leg.
Yeah.
But it's a solid project, it's something that we should be able to. We have that in the middle week, and bring it back to that by the end of the next meeting, we should.
Excuse me.
Go.
Good, I'm glad.
Get that.
I dare say I feel really good that there's some movement.
Yeah, me too.
I think it's wonderful.
It will be appreciated, I'm sure.
Yes.
Because we often hear that the money has sat there for a long time, nothing's been done. And that was one of the things that they really wanted to see is projects and movement. So if we can do that, that's a great thing.
Right.
So for next time you were gonna do financials.
Yep.
We'll obviously have the project from the three that's gonna have some, we'll wanna discuss that and get that ready to go out to, council and the recommendation.
And I'll also work with Jamie and the Director of Public Health to have a per caseworker estimate of cost.
Good.
Thank you.
For everyone to consider.
That will be good. So is there anything else that we need for the next meeting?
No, that's enough.
Are we gonna use the ARPA application or that generally?
Well, I think on this piece,
It's not needed, right?
we don't need it.
Yeah, I don't need
Yeah.
that for this, I guess, okay, we'll.
But we can look at that, if we can get this ready to go.
Yeah, sorry. Prior
And
discussion.
Yeah, then we can,
then we'll move on to the application process, because the next third and the third
yeah,
do require applications, so that should be a next thing we really need to look at.
mhm.
And in the meantime, we'll see how this goes with this program, and we'll learn from this, how
Yep.
it may help might just make it easier for others to fall in place.
Sure.
So, I think, it looks like everybody's kind of. They
zipping
start
up.
out nice and.
I just zipped up.
I'm scared enough.
Pretty soon. No, great job,
Thank you.
Are we adjourned?
lots of hard work, we are adjourned.
Okay.
Thank you.
Thank you.
I have order to say, kudos